Alle recording share. You didn't do that. Alle get the lower sound. Kari na. Alle didn't do what. Okay. Okay, so impermanence, right? Time goes so fast. I don't know if for you, but for me, I was, until I was 20, time was slow. And then after 20 to 40, it was kind of fast. But now I'm 50, so 40 to 50 was super fast. So I'm just thinking, maybe the life really goes fast because the time is just like maybe we are just getting used to it. There was one story that one person was very struggling with his life, and then he went to see this one spiritual master. And so he said to the master, Master, I need some advice, some wisdom, because I am struggling. And then Master looked at his face and he said, oh, actually, I am a fortune teller. The Master said to him, I can read people's face. And I see your fortune too. And then the man was like, wow, really? You see my fortune? That's wonderful. Can you tell me what is it? And the Master looked at him and said, you will struggle until you are 60. And then man was like, wow, really? And then? So he was hoping to hear some good answer, right? So yeah, I think I can deal with it. If I struggle until 60, then maybe something good will happen after that. That's good. So then Master said to him, yeah, after 60, you will be okay. And then man said to the Master, how come? Is something really good things happening to me? And the Master said, yeah, you will be okay because by that time you will totally get used to it. So sometimes it is kind of like maybe it takes 60 years to get used to our life, and then once you reach the 60, then it's just like, okay, doesn't matter. So anyway, also in Tibetan saying, like we live our life by saying, I will, which is kind of means, chego means, like, so in the beginning, first 20 years, like, I cannot, because we kind of say, I'm too young, I cannot. So, like, we will waste our first 20 year by saying, I cannot. And then middle 20 year saying, I will, I will. And then last 20 year saying, I didn't, I didn't. So, and then this master, Tibetan master also said, that is my autobiography. Maybe he was 60, when he said this. He said, if you want to know my life, first 20 years I recite this mantra saying, I can't, I can't. And then like the peak of my year, I said, I will, I will. But then I didn't, then kind of spend my another 20 years just saying, I didn't, I regret, I regret. So somehow time goes really fast. And life, if we look into our life, life is really impermanence, and it is not something mystery. It is not something hidden. It is very open, and we actually live our life. Sometime our mind is kind of stubborn. Like even though our body kind of grows old, then our mind kind of remain like a kind of stick somewhere. I have this one friend. He is like my age, and sometimes he kind of jokingly say things like, when people ask him, "How old are you?" I never grow old. Since I was 25, I'm still 25. So what he meant is he's saying like after 25 he start, counting his age, and he kind of like he made himself believe that I'm 25 and never going to grow beyond that. But sometimes it is kind of true. Many times, even though our body grows, but our mind still kind of stuck somewhere, right? Our mind stuck somewhere, just kind of like not believing that I am that old. So kind of and mind also kind of like deceive us, thinking that oh, this will happen to other, but this will not happen to me. I am inevitable, I can, like, nothing can touch me. Sometimes, we kind of, our mind deceive ourselves. And I think that is kind of because our mind didn't get to come to this kind of understanding or accepting the impermanence nature of life. So anyway, so we are now going into the learning, living and dying from the Tibetan Buddhist point of view, right? So Tibetan Buddhist point of view, as I mentioned this morning, the first thing, the basic kind of understanding, first what we need to know is we need to understand that life and death is not two separate things. And it's kind of like wherever life is, death is there. So it is actually kind of like if you are a living being, then somehow you are a dying being too. So it is like there is no separation between living and dying. So somehow it is like learning how to see living and dying as the two sides of the one coin. And I think that understanding, like that kind of like a, like if we actually really comfortable, when we actually reach that level of seeing living and dying as not some kind of two separate thing, it is something one, like wherever the living is happening, there is a dying is happening, like they are kind of, they go hand in hand. I think that is one basic wisdom that we need. If we have that basic wisdom, then somehow it will allow us to understand, or kind of allow us to go more deeper into understanding life. If not, if we kind of make this huge separation of living and dying and life and death as something like a two, then like kind of we will always go in, like fall into that trap of believing in the idea of death and believing in the idea of life. And so then kind of like even though when we are really thinking that we are going to deal with the death and dying, it will become some kind of superficial. It's just kind of like only on the intellectual level. And when it is remain on the intellectual level, then somehow it will kind of like remain very superficial. On the surface, it looks like something, but when it comes in really dealing with it, then it just kind of like not so helpful. So somewhere, I don't think we need any superficial here, right? There's a superficial enough in the world. And so we need something really genuine, like a kind of thing that will change how we deal with it, right? So it is like dealing with death and dying is not actually different from dealing with life and living. So this is not something two different thing. Like death and dying is not different from life and living. So like so to be able to go deeper into that understanding, then somehow like the life, what we call, so how actually it is formed. And then like in the Buddhist text, actually it actually talks, there is a lot of research that is done, like so how it is formed. So like this, how our life is formed. So life is actually built like this physical life we are talking about, right? The physical life. The physical reality or the physical life that we are carrying right now. And that actually physical life is actually begin with the 5 elements. Okay, so 5 element is something that kind of like we need to understand, like those 5 element, how it is actually formed. And then like when like the kind of like when it die, then just kind of like these 5 element again kind of like dissolve into each other. So first it formed from like for example, the 5 element normal, like we say 4 element, right? The 4 element is like the sa chu me lung, right? So it is like earth, water, fire, and wind. And on top of this general 4 element, in the Buddhism, there is another element, which is the 5th element. So the 5th element is actually called the space element. So it is space, or sometimes it is called namka. Namke jungwa. Namka means sky, or space, or ether, right? Sort of like ether element. So this, like the 5 element, first element that is actually formed in our life is the space element. So the space element, so first space element form, and in a way it is kind of true, right? Anything to happen, you need a space, right? If there is no space, then like how you going to create anything? So first you need a space. So the space, like that, that specific space, where your life is going to form. So that space is the space element. So in that space element, on that space element, the second element that is formed is wind element. Okay, wind. So it is like the wind element, and after the first is the space, then the wind, right? Wind element, and then fire, right? ZaChoeje Rinpoche. So wind, like the first is space, second is the wind, and third is the fire. So the fire element is formed, and then after the fire element, then the water element. So then after the water element, then the earth element, earth element. So see, this kind of like generally kind of 5 element, if you can actually look at this 5 element, like how it is formed kind of one after another. So first there is a space, and then there is a wind, the movement, and then with the movement it creates a fire, heat, and with the heat, then it actually, with the mix of heat and the wind, it forms the liquid, and then the liquid becomes solid and earth. So that is just kind of not only our physical life, but I think it applies to everything, right? It applies to everything, even our universe or anything that is formed, even our planet Earth. I think first there was a space, and then there was like an energy wind, and then there was like a heat, and then there was like a water, and then there's like a solid. So somehow, that is just a general, law of maybe physics, or like how physical things are formed. So our life also, like how it began, our physical life actually began with that. And then the 5 element actually somehow, like in this, like if you look at right now on this physical life, like it is actually all developed. Okay, the space is developed, and then wind element is also developed. That's why, like it is moving, right? All this movement is come from the wind element. So then, like we are breathing and all this, right? So movement is the wind. So movement part of the element is the wind. And then where we move, we need a space, right? Say if you are like, there is no space at all, you will be not able to move. So you need a space. And then even like inside our physical body, there's like all this space. And I think all space are also alive. That's what it is. In like when all the 5 elements are alive, so they are actually somehow the space within our body and outside of our body, all this somehow it is part of us too, part of our life. And then the movement is also part of our life. And then like there is like the body temperature, heat, right? So like if we look into how the fire element is all developed in our body, because there is a heat, right? This heat, like our heat is like around, what is the temperature of our body? 98 point something, right? So it is kind of like it is pretty warm, right? If the outside temperature goes to be, above 90, we're starting to feel like really hot, right? But I think that our body temperature is like pretty high, actually. So that's a fire element, right? It is coming from the fire element. And then there's like all this like a liquid, like the liquid part, which is all the water element. And then there's all this solid part, the skin and all the bones and the tangible, the solid part. That's kind of all alive, which is the earth element. See, so that's kind of like in the beginning, when it is formed in the mother's womb, so there's like this wind. So wind energy, that wind element, somehow in the Tibetan Buddhism, actually we focus there a lot. Like how there are many different level of wind. Actually, it is like Tsawe Lunga and Yelag. Lunga means 5 root, 5 root wind and the 5 branches wind or something like that. But somehow this wind has something to do with the different kind of chakras in our body. So actually, like how actually it is formed in our physical life, like when the first there's a space, and out of the 5 element, the first is a space element, then right after the space element, then the wind element, right? So there is a wind element. Somehow this wind, first wind, where actually it locate, right? Where, which part of the body, physical body, that actually formed. So actually it is the heart chakra. So it is like the heart, what do you call? The first subtle wind, actually that happens. And so somehow that wind, from the heart, actually one goes up, like one goes down, okay? So one goes like the kind of like the wind energy kind of spread, expand. So first there's like the heart, right? There's like the one wind, right? That's a subtle wind. So that subtle wind, somehow it expand. Okay, so it's starting to expand, and then it expand one upward and one downward. So then when it went up, actually it went into two different points. So it is like one, actually when it goes up there is a 2 point. It become kind of connecting into the throat chakra and the crown chakra. And then one that goes down is actually connected, like it become the wind, the subtle wind of navel chakra and the base chakra. So see, now it is kind of, the wind energy is actually kind of expanded. So first, so that like the center one, which is kind of, we call it mishikwe tigle, which means indestructible drop. Mishikwe tigle. So that actually, mishikwe tigle, that wind, so somehow, so in that space, where does this, wind? So that wind come from somewhere, okay? So that wind, that very subtle wind, actually come from somewhere. So that is what, from the Buddhist point of view, what we call it, came from the past life. Okay, so it came from past life. So this subtle wind actually came, and then when this subtle wind move, it moves now it moves the spot. Before it was in somewhere, somewhere else. But then when that body is actually dissolved, then that wind somehow flew away. Okay, so that wind flew away, and that wind is actually like the horse. Okay, so like the horse, it travels. But on that horse of wind, who is traveling with that? Who is riding that? Consciousness. So your consciousness, actually, your consciousness at the same time when this horse actually, when this wind, and kind of like when that wind landed on that space, that space, which is kind of like in our case, it is where it is the drop where the father essence and mother essence, that is the space. So in that space, somehow there's one being actually kind of entered into it. And it entered into that space, and how it travel is, it travel with that subtle, indestructible wind. And with that indestructible wind as a horse, the rider is the consciousness. So somehow they came together. So they came together and they landed on that spot, that space. So as soon as they landed on that first space, and then suddenly it's starting to extend. Okay, it extends into kind of like goes one up, one down. And then it formed the whole kind of like vertical kind of like a being. So it is like the crown chakra space, throat chakra space, heart chakra, and then navel chakra, and then the base chakra. So that the wind actually was formed there. From that wind, and now see, like in that space, and then the wind is actually now moving, right? The wind starting to move, and somehow, and that actually become like the kind of like when it's starting to move, then what it does is it's starting to create heat. So when all the chakra, all the chakras starting to move, and then what happened is it's starting to create the fire element. So the fire element started after that. But somehow it is very interesting that actually fire element actually comes from the wind. And we, in our daily life, for example, when we do like a lot of physical body movement, what happens? Right? For example, if you are jogging or if you're doing exercise, if you actually move your body a lot, then actually what it triggers? It triggers your heat, right? Your body temperature actually started to rise. And then, what happens after your body temperature rise? What happens? Sweat, right? You are going to sweat. See, right after your body becomes so heat, you sweat, which means with that fire element, water comes, right? The water element. And see, that is kind of like, generally it is kind of how it is. So in how our physical life is also formed that way. So there was a subtle movement. So these 5 chakras somehow, kind of each of these places will have a different kind of wind. At the heart chakra, which is kind of like we call the Soksul Gilung. Soksul means actually Sok means life. Okay, like what do you call life force, and Tselwa means giving or kind of like producing life force wind, we call it. So five actually wind has a different name, different label. So the first wind element that actually formed at the heart chakra level is called the ZaChoeje, which means life force giving wind. So that is, and somehow it is the life where all the life force actually came from. And then when it goes up, it is kind of like here, the wind, that wind at the throat chakra level is called Kengyu. Kengyu means kind of like upper, Ken means going upward moving wind. Okay, then it actually goes into the crown chakra, that crown chakra wind. So also like a different name, it is called Kyabche. Kyabche means all pervading, pervading, sort of like so it's kind of like the function of this wind is like actually it kind of like it distribute all the life forces. So kind of like this wind will push the energy up, and then once it reach here, so it actually distribute all the life force energy, all. So that somehow it is true, right? Our brain is the brain. This brain is the main worker, right? Just kind of it is the main kind of like what do you call main engine? So it gives all the work to all different part of the body. So somehow the wind that is in the crown chakra is called Kyabche, which just means all pervading, all pervading wind. And then one that is at the navel, that wind actually is called which is kind of nyamne, means nyamne means equalizing wind. Equalizing wind. So somehow it is kind of like this area, the navel area, which it is kind of, there is like a lot of what do you call, equalizing. So somehow, I don't know, nyamne means, nyamba means equal. So just kind of like making kind of balancing. So like balancing wind or something like that. So it is like nyamne means balance or kind of equalizing or balancing. So somehow, if you really look at it, this part of the energy actually does a lot of balancing thing, right? The things like if you look here, and then like there is a base, like it is kind of like which kind of the wind is kind of what we call is just like what do you call? Kyabche. Kyabche is the here, and then Kengyu, ZaChoeje, and nyamne. And then the one that is at the base one, actually, it is the meaning is like a releasing part, sort of like releasing, like it release. It actually part that is where it is like, of course, it has to release something, right? All the releasing, like is kind of like the function of here. So somehow look at that. And why, it is important, why I'm telling you this, is because this is how the life is formed, right? So life formed, like if you look at the first wind, out of 5 elements, the first is the wind element. The wind element is formed, and like based on the wind element make a movement, and then our body starting to form. But this same procedure, how it is formed, actually at the time when it is dissolved, it is going to dissolve that way. So it is going to dissolve that way. So somehow it is like when like the procedure of the death, like when it comes to the wind element dissolve, at the time of wind element dissolve, the wind element that actually spread vertical up and down, somehow these two wind that goes up and down, somehow it goes back into the middle. So it is like, coming, like one coming from up, going down, and the down one going up. So it is just kind of, they are not first or second, they're kind of coming together like this. So it is like when it is formed, also it forms together, like simultaneously, up and down go, like kind of up and down go like this. And then when it dissolves, again, it dissolves back. So it dissolved back like because it was extended. So at the time of death, actually, it actually goes back, putting it back. So then where actually it puts it back is at the heart chakra. So at the heart chakra level. So this, at the heart chakra level, so that is actually where actual death happens, right? The death happens like after the wind element dissolve, then it is kind of starting to, like, for example, like a wind element dissolve is where actually from the medical science point of view, that is they pronounce death, right? The death of physical life. So that is where, but from the Buddhist point of view, then actually there are other procedure that is actually happen, like a physical dissolution of wind is there. So then after the wind element dissolves, then what happened is then there is a few procedure, kind of now a karlampa, like a white appearance. Marlampa means red appearance, and then dark appearance, and then like a clear light appearance, which is the actual death. So this is all actually happens at the heart chakra. So this from the physical like a physical death point of view, and that is actually where it happens. Where actually death actually happen is at the heart chakra. So somehow when the physical death happens, there is like a how, first we need to know how it is formed, right? Because how it is formed, now it goes reverse. When it dissolves, it actually goes reverse in a reverse way, sort of like a dissolve. So that is why first space, and then wind element, and then wind element. After wind element, then it's starting to form a water element, and then water element after fire element. After fire element, then there's a water element, and then water element, then the water actually spread into the our like a physical body, and it's starting to grow. So the physical body is starting to grow. And so there is like when we were in the mother's womb, like this, like the first week, second week, third week, sort of like every week there is a development, there is a change, right? There is a change happen, and then somehow this change actually kind of like slowly it developed into different like a body part. So it is like where the first like where the crown chakra, your head starting to form, and where the throat chakra is this part of the throat level is going to form, and then heart where it is going to heart is formed, and then all this like navel and the liver and kidney, and then just kind of like the rest of the what do you call the body, and then also like how when our body is formed. So there is 5 senses, right? 5 senses of our body. So the five senses, out of five senses, again, which one is the first one that is formed? Like the physical body, like touch. Touch sense is actually the first one to form. And also when it developed, the touching sense developed first. So the touch, like body touch, like a sense, and then also second sense that is actually developed is tongue sense, taste sense, and then after taste, then it is a smell, like a nose sense, and after nose, then it is a ear sense. After ear, then it is an eye sense. So out of five senses, the last one that actually developed or kind of formed is the eye sense. It's kind of true, right? For example, like the baby, like they have a body sense, they have a taste sense, smell sense, they have a hearing, but the eye is not so clear, right? Even like when we look in, when like there is like a kitten and puppies, like they are born with their eyes closed, right? Their eyes are closed and they are born, and then like slowly after a week, then they kind of starting to open their eyes, which is their eyes is not ready. So somehow it is kind of like a eye sense is the last one that developed. So in that order, again, when dissolve, it dissolved backward, okay? The first sense that is dissolving in the process of death is the eye sense. So your eyes starting to become blurry. So that's eyes is going to, eye sense is going to go away. Second, I don't know scientifically they actually agree or not, but the second one is the hearing. Okay, hearing will go. Second, then dissolve. And then after hearing goes, then it goes the smelling will go, smelling sense will go. After smelling sense, the taste sense will go. After taste sense, your body sense, like a smooth and rough, you cannot feel. Like that sense will go. See, like even the five senses, and in the Abhidharma, actually, this Master Vasubandhu actually talks about, why these senses are actually in that order is because if you look how our body is formed, see, out of all the five senses, the eye is the highest, right? Where it is located in our body, right? Eye is the highest. After our eyes, where our eyes is, like maybe, I don't know, little bit below our eyes length, the ears, right? After a little bit below our ears, like if you go down, nose. Right beneath our nose, our tongue, right? Then beneath our tongue, this whole body, right? See. So how it is actually, our body is actually designed. Our body is designed that way. Our body designed in the five senses kind of designed that way, and somehow, and maybe, that is how it is formed, right? It is formed kind of like first the body sense form, and then the tongue, then the nose, then, the ear, then the eyes. So somehow, our physical body, the physical life, has a lot of things to do with the five senses, right? Five senses is an important part of our physical life. So this physical, however, this physical is formed that way, Okay, so physical is formed that way, and then when the physical death happens, what happens is it goes in that order. So it is like, so how it is formed this way and how it collapsed that way. So it is just kind of like, it's by nature, nobody made it. It's like by nature, it is formed that way and it will go that way. So that's from the Buddhist kind of point of view, there was a lot of research done by many practitioners, and they actually kind of build that kind of basic understanding. So, like with that basic understanding, how actually they do is they actually use that information, that understanding for your own spiritual development. Because it is important, because somehow how your body, and especially the wind, which we call it tsalung. Tsalung means like the channel and wind, right? The energy, sort of like, because it is our life force somehow, it is run by that life wind or force, right? That life wind and force, and somehow there is a kind of like a very strong connection between our consciousness and that wind. So that wind and consciousness, because they have been traveling together, right? Life after life, they have been together. They are together. It is just like somehow you cannot separate the consciousness from the wind. You cannot separate the wind from the consciousness. They are like somehow consciousness cannot move if there is no wind. And then the wind will also become useless if there is no rider. So it is like the horse and rider kind of metaphor that we always use. So that is why in the practice, how does it help? Is because when you understand, when you know how this wind is actually formed, and then because how wind is our form, then our consciousness also expand that way, right? Because if the wind expanded, then our consciousness also expanded. So our consciousness expanded, and somehow, just kind of like our consciousness, where our consciousness somehow, where we send our mind, and our consciousness tend to move there, okay? So when our consciousness moves there, somehow wind follows it, because consciousness goes there using the wind, right? So somehow it is just the rider say, hey, let's go this way. So then, the rider has a power, right? The rider has a power. Okay, I want to go to east. So then the horse will turn to the east. When the rider wants to go to the west, it will go to the west. See, somehow it is like the consciousness, when you are, when you actually, with the meditation, so the consciousness, when it actually, consciously drive, with the full awareness. So that is where they are applying meditation. So that is why, when they actually use that mind to go to different places, and then somehow it will change our wind. It will change our wind. And if the wind changes somehow, we will be able to kind of guide our life in a kind of we can guide our life in where we want to. if not, then if our mind is everywhere, unconsciously doing, mindlessly doing something, then our wind energy is everywhere, right? It's just kind of like your mind is just like, sending far away into the another planet, and somehow our wind goes there too. So it is just like if your mind is just always into some negative places, what happened? Our energy goes there. Our wind goes there too. Our wind goes there, and then it just get all messed up, dirty, and then come back, right? So see how mind and wind has a connection. So when the wind comes back, then whatever our wind is, if our wind is messed up, if our wind is kind of dirty, diluted, then what happened is we starting to experience it. We starting to feel that kind of like that stress, that dirtiness, that kind of an uncomfortableness. So that is why it is just kind of like when like in the meditation. So somehow we use the understand the connection between the consciousness and the wind. So the wind actually somehow it is like on our daily life basis, actually when we go to sleep, actually we experience small death. Not an actual like physical death, but like somehow we call it like a half death. Half death experience. So half death experience, how it comes. Like for example, when we fall into sleep, then what is actually happening in our wind system is that actually the wind that is on this crown chakra level and the wind that is on the base chakra level, actually it's starting to come back, okay? It become inactive somehow, not so active like awake. So when we fall in sleep, so it's kind of when we are falling into sleep, when we are going into sleep, it's the wind that is in crown chakra and wind that is on the base chakra, actually they are starting to come on the heart level. Actually, when you fall in sleep, it will come here. But not totally dissolve, but the energy actually comes here. And then, because you're not totally dead, you're half dead, right? So what happened is then this wind slowly starting to move, not totally up, just little bit up towards the throat chakra, little bit down towards the navel chakra, and that is the time you dream. So your dream comes that time. When your wind is actually totally here, you don't dream. Or if your wind is totally up here, active, not dream. You cannot dream that because you have to fall in sleep to dream, right? So somehow, when you fall in sleep, that is actually happens. Like like the wind, like from the upper wind and the lower wind, they actually come at the heart level. And slowly, right after you fall in sleep, and then like this kind of wind little bit goes up, and then when it goes little bit up, and that is your like a dream state. And sometime in your very deep sleep, sometime this wind will not move upward or downward at all. So it is just like it kind of stays here, not moving. That's actually called the deep sleep. Okay, very deep sleep. So when you are in a very deep sleep, you will not dream. So like you are sleeping, but your wind is moving upward and downward a little bit, and there you are into a different world. So you're in a dream, sort of like a dream world, and so somehow that is kind of like sometimes some Buddhist practitioner actually use that. They use that sort of like how to kind of like they consciously sleep there, and then bringing the awareness, awareness in your sleep, and then then when it is kind of like on that dreaming state, sort of like a lucid dreaming, so like you actually know that you are dreaming, and then but at the same time you are being aware of your dream, and then sometimes that kind of state, when you are in that different dream state, it's a powerful kind of state that you will be able to use that for your meditation, like spiritual development and things like that. So there's a whole another practice called like a dream yoga, so they actually kind of practice on that, like kind of bringing that on their practical level, sort of like using like I think sometime in the West people do the lucid dream, people are able to kind of go into their dream and then practice like a lucid dream, and that's takes some time to practice, but I think and that kind of a dream yoga, like we call it milam ginenjur, like that kind of practice is there. So see, that's actually working with the dream. And so somehow with that basic understanding, when you understand how your channel and wind works, then like your mind actually are able to work on that, and then that is kind of like exactly when the physical death happens, then it will happen in that order. So see, that is why how our life is formed and then how our physical life dissolves. So this kind of like the result of the research that is done by many Buddhist practitioners in the past. So we actually kind of learned that in our when we were studying, and then not only learn, again we have to put that into practice too. So the practice is many times there are some deity practice, right? So some deity practice, in many of the deity practice you must, if you are aware of some of this traditional Buddhist deity practice, it is always kind of begin with this Om Sambhava Shuddho Sawa Dharma Sambhava Shuddho Ham, everything become empty, see, right? That they always kind of begin with that kind of word, like so that's also, like if you look at it, that's kind of simply kind of going in that order. Like first space element, empty, right? The space element. And then from there, it is just kind of like the wind element, and then like the fire element, sort of like, so there are many different symbols, and many of these symbols, sometimes it is the symbol of different elements. So different elements, symbol, and things like that. So that is kind of like from the Buddhist point of view, how life form, how life dissolve. And then, of course, when the element dissolve, then how does it dissolve, right? So how it is formed, the first is the wind, and then is the fire, and then there's the water, and then all the physical, the solid earth form, right? So when it dissolves back in opposite order. So how does it dissolve? So it dissolves into, from first is the earth element, okay? Earth element dissolve, become inactive, and then it dissolves into water element. And then water element become inactive and it dissolve into fire element. And then fire element become inactive, dissolve into wind element. And then wind element become kind of inactive, stop, right? The movement stopped. And after the movement stopped, then kind of like there is an inner dissolution. Sort of like inner dissolution is like all the thoughts and emotions and conception, the ideas that you built in your life, they are all going to dissolve after that. So there's like all the, conceptions will actually dissolve, and then all the, this kind of like a white appearance. So somehow, like the appearance, white appearance will come, and then red appearance, and then dark appearance, and then after the dark appearance, then somehow you actually clear from all the conceptions, and you actually reach the clear light, which is the clear light means no obstruction. There's nothing is obstructing. So just kind of, seeing your naked truth of yourself. So that in that like which we call it like a chiwa vessel. Chiwa means death. So the clear light of death. So somehow that is the actual death. So somehow that death is very, somehow it is like luminous, pure, and what do you call? No kind of defilement, right? It is just like a very clear, right? So it's a no obstruction. So that actually is sometimes we don't know. Maybe we are attracted to that. We are actually we don't know it, but somehow we are drawn to it. Right? There's kind of like why we are drawn to it. It's kind of like sometimes it is weird. Like as our mind is like always in a contradiction, right? It's just it says that I don't like it, but then really you like it, right? Your mind kind of doesn't know what to do. It's just kind of like you are like somehow I think. There is some kind of like drawn attraction. I think we have. I don't know why. I feel that, but I don't know. But just kind of like look at, like for example, even if you are reading a story, like a comic, a book, or something in your life, what do you think? Where there is a death, are you drawn to it? Like, for example, I'm just kind of like fascinated with this. Like now these days, people are like, for a few years, people are so much interested in the vampire, right? The story of vampire. It's just like, especially the teenage, they are so drawn to that. Like, like when this book came, like the Twilight movies, and then somewhere it becomes so, what do you call? It's just like they are so drawn. And nobody knows why they are drawn to it. What is so interesting thing about this vampire thing? What is there? But it is something to do with the death, I think, right? Death and after death. So it is kind of like a vampire is the one that came out of death, right? It is just beyond the death. It's like somebody who died and then, like a rise from the death. And then again, you see right after that, like how people are so interested in zombies, right? Like the concept, right? The story of zombies. And just kind of like people like general people, like if you look at why they are so drawn to these stories, like it's not attractive, right? What do you think? Like the story of the zombies, like looking at the zombies is not so attractive, but somehow there is some kind of attraction that we don't know why it is so. And so, for example, like there's this, like some kind of story, like a mystery, like a thriller, like something to do with death. Then somehow it's a kind of intense story. It just pull us, right? That kind of story will pull us in. So so there's a kind of tension, there's a fear, there's like all these things, right? Somehow, like I look at, interestingly, for example, the two topics such as like sex and death. What do you think? Right? Why this is too important factor? Why it is so why it is so sensitive, right? Like it's just kind of like the topic. It's just there's like a huge, right? Like our general mind, our energy is very drawn to this subject, the subject of sex, subject of death. It's just like it's the two main cause of the gossips, right? It's just like so this. What is so important there? I think there is something to do with it. And in reality, really, life actually began by sex, right? So life began by sex. And then that physical life actually ends with the death. See, now, I think there is a connection, right? There is a connection. Maybe that's why we are drawn. But somehow, then again, like there is actually very strong connection between the sex and death again. It's very interesting. Because there is a huge connection. It's just like somehow there is a death factor in the sex. And then there is a sex factor in the death too. There is a kind of very interesting, this. That is why, I don't know, like the clear light, I think there's something to do with it. So death is this clear light, right? The clear light is the death where all the kind of, truth, the essence become naked, right? That is where everything is open. Everything is just clearly open. And that is, and somewhere, like, it is not like we are dying for the first time, I think. Right? So I think we died for limitless time. Right? We died for limitless time. So somehow, like deep inside, we carry some wisdom. We know that, there is something very important factor there. But somehow, then again, we have a lot of fear, right? It's just kind of like, it is something like you're so interested in it, but you're so afraid of it, right? It's just like, see, when these two things, like you really like it, but at the same time you're so scared of it, what's going to happen with that? And how you're going to deal with that, right? So see, I think the death is kind of, physical death is kind of like that. It's like there is something, it's just like you're pulling into it, there is something and maybe that is also the reason why we are all chasing each other or competing with each other. Like saying that, I will be the first, I will be the first. Right? So it's like the target is the death. And then like we are all just then at the same time, it's just kind of like, I don't want to go there, but but I will go there as fast as I can. So see, there's kind of I always see that there's a contradiction, like a contradiction. So somehow, this contradiction, maybe it's the problem, because that is where we struggle. So that is where we struggle. So sometimes we need to actually see it through, that maybe, this is, after all, in reality, yes, death is, it's a, what do you call, very clear light, outstanding experience, right? It is. And so the idea of death that we are so scared of, maybe it is not the death. It is just our idea that is created by our ego and our fear. So we are somehow, when we actually look at how our life is formed and how it will dissolve, and that's just totally nature. It's natural. If we are able to look at it as a total natural thing, this is something not made up. It is just natural thing, and if you go with the nature, and maybe our idea of death will dissolve. So it is maybe we will understand that yes, I am scared, but am I really scared of the death, or am I scared of the idea of the death? So maybe there is a two different thing. Maybe you're not really scared of death. Maybe you're just scared of idea of death, like our idea of what is going to happen. This is going to happen. Then this will happen. And sometimes I kind of honestly, when I read the Tibetan Book of Death, sometimes I don't like it. It creates some kind of fear, right? It creates some kind of fear to the people, and also it creates some sort of another idea. After death, the first week, I'm going to have this kind of vision, and so, this is and then how they described in the Tibetan Book of the Death in a traditional way is there's a scary image. And they even make a movie of that, right? They have made a documentary about it, and I watched that, and it's somewhere I think it's not so pretty. Some of the images are kind of scary, but we all have enough fear. Why do we have to make extra fear? It's not necessary, right? Not necessary because somehow we have enough fear to that idea of death already. And on top of that, why I don't think that it is necessary to have another more fear. So, realistically, practically, I don't think we have to be, scared too much. We don't have to believe everything, whatever it said in the text. So somehow, kind of I brought up that way. I'm brought up that way because we have so many things. If you want to believe everything what it is said in the text, then it just kind of too much. So it is kind of, you don't really have to believe everything written in the text, because everything written in the text, maybe it is somebody's idea, right? And why do we have to believe on somebody's idea? It is so that is why I think from Buddha, even in the beginning of his teaching, he always says that don't believe everything what I say. Buddha said it. So that is a very generous of, Buddha. It is saying that don't believe whatever I say. So maybe he knows that in the future many many masters and many interpreters are going to interpret his teaching in a many different way by saying that, oh, this is what Buddha said, this is what Buddha said. So then you are actually kind of like forced to believe, right? You are forced to believe because it is like almost saying like, this is what Buddha said. But then sometime, we can actually question it. It's okay, I think. That is the good thing in the Buddhism, that you can question. So it is like you can actually question it. Then why? Why it is? Why do I have to believe you? How do you know that Buddha said that? Right? So sometimes if you ask this question, it is kind of like very interesting, like somebody say, I had sometime kind of a debate with some of the, very kind of like senior monks, and so sometimes I play with it. We kind of do a lot of debate, and at the end they kind of like starting to say like, Rinpoche, this is what Buddha said. So they will actually, they are making a reference to, like saying that it is this way. Why? Because this is Buddha said it. And then I always kind of goes back into them and saying, how do you know? Yes, of course, if this is Buddha say, I will consider it. But now I am not in a position right now here that I'm not going to believe that this is what Buddha said. Maybe this is just you made it up. Right? So it is like every time I throw this question, how do you know that Buddha said this? And they don't have an answer. Right? And really, how do you, like even if you answer, what will they say? What will you say? Oh, this is what Buddha said. And then final answer is like, I thought so, right? I thought Buddha said this. So this is not really Buddha said. It is your thought that Buddha said it. So maybe, like it is like your Buddha said it, but my Buddha didn't say it. Right? The Buddha that is in your thought is saying like that. The Buddha that is in my thought is different, right? So maybe my Buddha who is in my mind is saying something else. And your Buddha who is in your mind is saying something else. So we are both correct. Right? So both of these, whether it is yes or no, it is said by Buddha. Why? Because your Buddha said no, my Buddha said yes. Right? So sometimes it's kind of like confusing. People, our mind kind of goes in that way. And I think it is actually happens in every different traditions. All the different traditions. Sometimes people say, it is this because, God said that to me. Because, then it's just like, I actually hear God, I hear him. So it is like, then it's a question, right? It's just kind of like, sometimes I say things like, if you talk to God, it is normal. It is, you are okay. If God's starting to talk to you, you are insane. Right? It's just kind of like, well, I think it's normal to like, why this is happening, God, why? And then suddenly, from the sky, some voice comes, right? Hey, I'm God. And, things are like this, why I made it like that. It's just kind of like, I don't know, what do you think? Then it's different because it's kind of like a schizo, right? Schizophrenia. Because you're starting to hear things. Sometimes I was like, I remember one time like the stories of, what is that? In the middle of the desert, Abraham, right? like he almost killed his son because God, told him to. So it's like when I hear this kind of story, I was always like, wow, this guy hears things from the bushes. so I don't know. So sometimes, like what Buddha said is not really what Buddha said. It is the Buddha in your mind is saying it. So that is why I think nobody there actually came from death. So somehow, it is just kind of like whatever happens right after death is just, I don't know. Like honestly, if you ask me, I will say, I don't know. In the text, there is saying something like that, right? In the scripture, it says something like that. But is that what I think it is? I don't know. Because, just kind of like, it is like, I never, I don't remember. I don't remember coming back from death, but then I think there are some people might say that I have a near-death experience, then it's their personal experience. I don't know. Like if you ask me, I didn't have a near-death experience, so I cannot say, right? And somebody has a near-death experience, then yes, that is their experience, which is I cannot, kind of like reject, or I cannot sort of like judge them. Because, for example, it is something like that, like I'm going to tell you my dream, right? So if I say, hey, last night I dreamed like this, that, and you just simply believe it, right? You just simply believe that, oh, you had that dream, that's so interesting. But it is my experience. And other than you are just believing it, you don't have access. You just like, you don't know, actually I dream or not, right? It's just whatever I say, it is just like you thought, so maybe just you will think, oh, he will not lie, maybe that's true, right? So I think like the near-death experience and the death experience, I think it is something like that, If they experience, then that is their experience. Then I cannot judge. So maybe it is, like sometimes people have a near-death experience and they come back and they totally change. Like they change how they, view life. And sometimes they become more alive. And that's a good thing, right? So that is, something about the death. And so just kind of like generally, how life is formed, how life, dissolve, is kind of like from the Buddhist point of view, it is like that. So this is all coming from what I studied. And so somewhere I think it is useful to look at it, because this is something like it's a common sense, right? For example, how our physical life actually, we are experiencing it right now, right? We are experiencing our life right now, but this life, this body, this life, physical life that right now we have, it's not fallen from the sky like that, right? There is a gradual, right, development. It is developed into this physical life right now from something, from very nothingness kind of thing, right? In the beginning, there was nothing. That's where it comes from. It comes from your mother's womb. And in your mother's womb, maybe there was an egg, but that egg actually wasn't you. It can be taken by anybody. It is not like it is designated for you. But it can be taken by anybody. But somehow, with our karma, we were kind of landed there, right? So landed there, and sometimes, like in the Western culture, sometimes people blame their parents. I think that is, we don't have to blame. It is, it is not them that they bring us. It is us that we choose, right? I think it is ourselves. We chose the spot. So somehow, if we look into life like that, then sometimes it is good. It will actually help us to understand, live our life better. And at the same time, if we kind of we are comfortable with, okay, this is how it is formed, then we will accept that how it will go, right? Because it is if it is comes without any cause and condition, just like boom, then maybe you will stay. But it came gradually develop this way, and then it will gradually go that way. See, so this is kind of you will understand life and death as kind of like that. And then also, when we come to that kind of understanding that my life actually, my physical life actually came from this being just kind of a fetus in the mother's womb, and then slowly grow and then become a baby, and then it's just sometimes actually it gives you different perspective, right? Sometimes we forget. We forget that we came from being a, beautiful baby, right? We were once a beautiful baby. We were all once very pure, very non-judgmental, very, very open, very loving, very compassionate, very peaceful. That kind of baby we were. But somewhere along the way, we become this, and then sometimes as an adult, we forget. Just sometimes, when I see people sort of kind of thinking that they are so independent, right? But we are not so independent, right? Dalai Lama always, say that, look how we were brought up with the compassion, right? We were brought up with this affection, compassion. And see, that is kind of how we were brought, and we become this. But sometimes we forget that, right? We forget how we are, how we become that, and we just kind of thinking, okay, now I'm by my own, because I can walk, I can, do things. But in reality, we are dependent, very dependent, right? Dependent on many things. Even just kind of the clothes that we are wearing, the food that we're eating, just even the air that we are breathing. And somehow we are dependent. For example, we think that we don't depend on these trees and the planet. We don't depend on this water, right? Just kind of many people are just doing sort of oh, it doesn't matter, I will cut all the trees. It doesn't matter, I will just pollute the air. It just doesn't matter, I can just pollute the whole water. I will just make some money, right? It's just kind of it's somehow, it is you're destroying yourself. If you do that, you're destroying yourself, because it's see, what happened if you cut all the trees? What happened if you just pollute the whole water? What happened if just kind of everything? And then, just yeah, you can make money, but who is there to enjoy the money? Right? It's just but yes, you can. But then again, just kind of if we kind of live our life by saying, I'm so independent, I'm just like that, then I think it will kind of like you will become very selfish, I think, right? So kind of like we need to come back to who we are, how we become this, right? How I have achieved this physical life. And this physical life is that what we have, and that's again, it's not long. It is actually, if we live for 100 years, that's long, right? If just kind of maybe our body is designed to live for maybe around 100 years. But even if we live for 100 years, I don't know, our physical body condition will be good enough to that, like after 90s, it's just kind of starting to become difficult, right? So it's kind of like, if we look at our life like that, then somehow what happens is if you understand that I am independent, my life is this, short span, and just kind of like, then we will starting to generate, become a genuine compassionate, genuine caring person, just kind of like, somehow it will become sort of like a genuine compassionate, loving kindness person. So that is what actually, by understanding the emptiness, by accepting the impermanence, by accepting the impermanence nature, by accepting that we are dependent being, like that, I think those all things comes when we are totally open to the impermanence nature of life. And then there is no difference between impermanence nature of life and the death of the physical life, right? So this is kind of like, so somewhere this kind of like seeing the death, changes, impermanence, it is after all, it is not negative. So we need to kind of clear ourselves when we look at death, whenever we look at, when we speak of death, death is not, we should not consider it as something negative or something unwanted. It is kind of like something natural, something that is there, something actually, in a way, something beautiful, right? Something beautiful. Changes is beautiful, right? Changes is beautiful. Impermanence nature is beautiful. Then if you look at the death as a clear light, then what do you think? Death is the clear light, then that is the pure. See, so that is something that if we can actually, if we open ourselves to the death, the subject of death, then I think we don't have to do some extra work to overcome the fear. So it is just kind of like, because there is a fear, yes, of course, right? There is a fear, and this fear actually somehow will actually turn into some sort of like a positive, like a love or compassion or something. So then I think we are successful in practicing living and dying. Yeah. So any question that you have? All right.
In the morning session, you gave the example of mala.
Yeah.
The beads being the individual life, and then the thread.
Yes.
Being the connection.
Yes.
What is the terminology in Tibetan and in Tibetan language and also in Sanskrit for the thread, whatever carries the karma from tendency from one bead to another, one life to another?
You are saying what is the Tibetan word for that is carrying one life after another? There are actually many Tibetan words that, we actually set up like life after life, serap ne serap. And another kind of like I think we don't call the Atma. Atma is a Hindu word. And then soul, I think it is like a Judeo-Christian kind of like idea of the self. But it is something like in Tibetan, like Kangsa or Kebu, like that. Kangsa, so very similar to the word like being. So it is, I think the translation for Kangsa and Kebu, or sometimes it is translated as a person, sometimes it is translated as a being. So not specific being, like a not human being, because we are not always human beings. Sometimes we are animal being, sometimes we become a human being, sometimes we become a divine being. So sometimes we become an alien being. So it is not a human being, but just some sort of like a being like in, I think closest English word I always get is the being. So then that actually connects, right? That just kind of remain. And then again, that actually raised another question that, okay, so this being always remain, that means is that permanent? So then we say, no, that's not permanent. It's that being is, why it is not permanent is because it changes its form. Like because that being, when that being actually, have human body, then that being become a human being. And then when that being actually connect with the animal being, so that time that being changes it, into animal being. So if it is a permanent, then it will not change its form. So because it is impermanence, it is changing its form like that, yeah. So somehow that may be the thread that is on each of them. And then like another, some in the Buddhist philosophy actually say that how it is all the beats are connected, what is the thread in between, is they say it is a karma. So the karma that actually keeps all the life, kind of all the dots connected like that, yeah.
You also mentioned that the lung and the consciousness always together. Is there ever a time, eventually when they separate, when you finish, the samsaric existence, finish all your karma, and then the consciousness, finally separates, and, then you reach enlightenment. Is that correct or not?
In the text, actually, it says that it never separates. Even after enlightenment, the consciousness and the wind actually kind of like they say, Gyawe kusuntu, like means enlightened body, speech, and mind, kind of inseparable. So it is kind of the enlightened body and speech is the manifestation of that wind, and the enlightened mind is the manifestation of the consciousness. So even when you reach the enlightenment, like that, the wind will become an enlightened body, and then the mind will become an enlightened mind. But somehow they will never separate. That's what in the text it says, yeah.
So Rinpoche, I like the metaphor how you said, like, breathing in and then taking the oxygen, the essence, and then breathing out. You use it as a metaphor for life. So what would you say the oxygen or the essence that we take in, what is that a metaphor for?
Oh, you mean in life, huh?
Yeah, in life, yeah.
I think just kind of like life is it's a formation, right? It's form, and so what we are taking from life, like what it is taking, like the oxygen, right, is experiences. You know, the experiences, different experiences. So the different experiences actually dissolve into the being, and then just kind of like letting out. So it is just kind of like, and it is also a interesting metaphor, like for example, like in our life, whatever we experience, you know, just kind of like we just let it experience, and then just kind of like after you experience it, you just let go. And that's also another lessons. So I think the you know, like the example of the oxygen is the different experiences in life. Yeah.
You talked about an indestructible drop, and I'm wondering if, you know, with the Tibetan meaning of being, how that connects to the indestructible drop that forms first in life.
Indestructible form. Drop.
Yeah, because you know, we said that's the first thing that appears, and anything that appears life after life, and it doesn't sound like it's a, you know, has a personality or something at that time. So I'm wondering if that's same as what you were talking about when you said being, or if that's something else.
I think being is the one that who owns it. So that mishikpa tigle, you know, in Tibetan word we say mishikpa means indestructible, tigle means drop. So that is the wind, actually, the most subtlest wind. So most subtlest wind is not the being. And even the most subtlest consciousness is also not the being. So both consciousness and the wind is not the being, but it belongs to the being. So it's part of it. Like for example, like this my body, right? This my body, this my physical body is my. So the owner of this body is the being. So there's a me, like who is the owner of this, you know. So I am not my body is not me, but it belongs to me. Same thing. So that indestructible wind or drop, it belongs to the being, but it is not the being. So the consciousness also there, it belongs to the being. You know, whose consciousness is that? That being's consciousness. Whose indestructible wind is that? That being's indestructible. So that is why it is not the being, but it belongs to being. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
When I walked in, you talked about killing time.
Killing time, yeah.
And my question is on a more practical level with that. If you find that you are in a point where you feel like you are just killing time basically until death, how do you deal with that? My biggest fear when I retired is that I would have nothing to do. And having nothing to do is very frightening. And I'm still dealing with it.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah, I think it is not only your problem. You know, I think it's just kind of, it is like many people, you know, because when they have a lot of time in their hand, it is scary, right? Just kind of like, so that is where it actually comes, like, okay, so now I have a lot of time and I don't know what to do with it. And then you just kind of like, I think that happens, then, starting to kill time happens, right? That is, so I think it is just kind of like what is the antidote for that? What is the antidote for that is just kind of first, you have to know that this kind of time is precious. So that is first, I think we have to come to understand, we have to come to just kind of like learn how precious it is. It is precious. And so like if you actually know that this is precious, and my human life is precious, and every moment of my human life is precious. Like if you actually genuinely feel that this is precious, and then I think this kind of like a killing time will not come. So because when we actually kind of go into killing time, and that is like we actually think that this is not precious, right? Again, another thing for like why we want to pass time fast, that's just kind of like we like to fast forward the time, right? Again, that's another interesting mentality behind that. Because like somewhere we think that something is there in the future. So we are always kind of like looking, there must be something, something is there. If I reach the future faster, maybe I will get that. So that is why we always think that something is in the future, like some valuable thing in the future, but we don't see valuable thing in the present. So now, like what we need to do is, maybe, the valuable thing is not in the future. That preciousness is in the present. So that preciousness is in the moment right now. So it is just kind of like we need to develop that kind of, realization, that understanding that preciousness is not in the future. Preciousness is in the present. So the more we actually learn how to live in the present moment, maybe that will help us to utilize our time more wisely, I think. But I think, but sometimes we have this kind of interesting mentality that is, we don't know where it come from, but it's somewhere there, right? It's just kind of thinking that, something is in the future. So that is why we are always racing towards the future. And that's why many people actually unconsciously, fast forwarding. Like just kind of, the time went so fast, I'm so happy, right? It's just kind of like interesting. Like, for example, I don't know, like sometimes it is I used to, like in the long time when I was flying, like a long flight, I used to kind of like, this is too much time, I want to do something. But just especially sitting in the airplane is just like, it doesn't worth it, right? But then like after like a lot of travel, I kind of find out that actually this is some good moment. So then it just kind of, yes, on the physical level, it is a little tiring. But then on the mental level, sometimes I feel very interesting. This kind of even sitting in the flight for 12 hours, like my mind, I always kind of like starting to think, using that for some kind of meditation, like some kind of like, it's kind of it is like, I don't know, maybe it just, maybe I'm just kind of a abnormal person, like coming like 12 hour in the flight, and I'm just like, oh, already here? Wow. So it just kind of didn't, I was using that time for some interesting thing, just kind of like not really wasting, not trying to kill it, but it is just kind of trying to use it for better, meaningful thing. And so I don't know, maybe I was not like that before, but something maybe, I don't know, along the way, which I see that, wow, even, you're sitting like this, you can still use your time in a good way. So, I think it is doable. Like when I think maybe I see the value in the present moment more. So if you see the value more in the present moment, I think, you just kind of like, there is a big difference between killing time and enjoying time. Like if you are enjoying it, I think it's not killing, right? You just kind of like in the moment, you're just kind of like, like you're not doing this for the purpose of, fast forwarding it. You're just doing it to kind of enjoy it, yeah. Being is same as openness. I think I don't know. That's just kind of like a definition, right? It seems like open is something that being will do. Being will open. Being will open their, So I don't know, maybe by itself, what is being is just kind of like, I don't know, being is a being. Right? Being. And just being like a human being. So being person, the person is just a being, right? Human being. So that is, openness is something that it is the quality of it, yeah. There is a quality of openness in the being, yeah. Okay.
This is more just a comment, because last week Geshe showed us like tidbits from Tibet about procrastination. And it's an old teaching you gave, and I feel like you were teaching about death and dying or something, because you talked about procrastination, how we don't want something to come, so we put it off, we kind of fear it or whatever, whether it's either go to work or, and then you said it was like the flip side of that, though, is exactly what you're saying, is that actually people who rush for something, it's actually the same energy, it's that same procrastination, but like you're saying, and you said it's like two sides of this coin, so like they're running to it as well, and that they don't give it the whatever, that there's a time for everything. And then you said, like, if you have to go to work, be the worker, or if you're going to be a if you've got to paint, you said,
Painter.
before you paint, become the painter.
Yeah.
And so it's just funny because that's all week I've just been like, I don't know, whatever, being the dental hygienist or whatever, being the worker. Or
Yes,
being
yeah.
And it does make a difference. I don't know, but anyway, it's just funny because we're talking about being and
Yes,
the
yeah.
being, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is all.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Being, like, I think, like, for example, another way to define being is like when, being is like the person who is doing, right? So person who is doing things is the being. So how can you be the person who is doing is like when you are eating, be the eater. When you are painting, be the painter. When you are driving, be the driver. So being the driver. So see, like I think that is, I think you are saying, right? Yeah, I think something like that. And yes, in the art of, I did talk on that on the art of procrastination. And I'm good at it. And we are all good at it. Yes. All right, so I think we will stop here for today. And then tomorrow, again, we will go more. And if you have any more questions regarding this, living and dying, and then something if you find difficult, and then please bring that question, and I will try to answer. And then, so today we actually talk a lot on how life is formed and how life will dissolve and how can we accept the impermanence nature. And then tomorrow, I think we will talk on how to prioritize, what is important. So it's just kind of like what matters the most at the time of death. So that may be topic we will go. Yeah. Okay. All right. So.